Welcome to our Guernsey Hockey Podcast, Brendan. It's great to have you, and it's been a while since we saw you a couple of years ago at Hockey Fest. What have you been up to since then?
Oh God, a lot of training, competitions. Probably not appreciating anywhere near as much sun as I would like to. But yeah, I guess life has kind of flown by over these past few years, and unfortunately for the last year, it's been a pretty miserable one on that side of things. But obviously, it's very much out of our control. I was hoping actually to kind of get back to come and see you guys at some point, but unfortunately, that opportunity hasn't arisen as of yet. But there's
I mean,
definitely hope for the future that
we kind of penciled in last September, hadn't we? And it was a shame we weren't able to.
Yeah, and then obviously everything's kind of happened since then, so it's been a bit of a frustrating year, I'd say, but it has been for everyone, I think.
Yeah, I guess though, in some ways, it's given you a bit of time to recover from that injury you had, and some ways,
yeah, I guess I kind of, yeah, probably it's been a good thing in terms of my longevity of career for sure, but at the same time, obviously, I wouldn't have wanted this situation to be upon anybody, to be honest. So from that point of view, I guess it's been a bit of a bit of an odd feeling, really, on that side of things. But yeah, for my longevity of career, it's definitely helped me take my time on recovery rather than feel pushed, which is quite a good place to be.
Cool. So you said you've been training a lot. What's training kind of looked like over the last sort of, I guess, year, 18 months, and
so I guess the training's probably been quite similar to everybody else's during COVID in terms of it was all very much like individual, then in twos, then in fours, then in sixes, like kind of working your way back and basically following government guidelines. And then for the past, I'd say 5-6 months, it's been very much we've been able to train still as an elite. We've got elite dispensation, so as a group, we've still been training outside as a big group, which has been quite nice. Then I guess in the gym, it's been a bit more scripted in terms of masks on whilst doing your gym routine. So it's kind of a bit different in the gym, but I guess we've been pretty lucky with being able to still train and kind of life still being able to go on. Whereas obviously a lot of people have been confined to a home office or confined to indoors majority of the day, which obviously during the summer was quite difficult. I guess during the winter, it's probably a little bit more appreciated with the temperature drop and everything else. But yeah, I guess we've been pretty lucky that life's been relatively, I guess, as normal as it probably could have been. So we've been pretty, I think a lot of us are grateful for the opportunity to still be able to train and kind of still go after it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, last 6 months we've been able to sort of train fully as well, just because of the way things have developed over here. But yeah, seeing you guys on Instagram and social media, sort of having to go through quite a lot of pressures for your training has been, it's just quite interesting to see. I heard from one of the guys involved with the German team earlier today saying that they had to test every week. Is that something you guys have had to do as well?
No, we've basically temperature gauged and we've had a few PCR tests like in and around it all. So we've been quite, I guess we've been quite lucky because when the group that we've had, that basically you fill out this thing called PDMS, which basically is daily monitoring. So you basically take your temperature before you wake up. Sorry, not before you wake up, obviously after you've just woken up. You check your heart rate. You kind of basically follow normal lifestyle principles. So if you're already noticing that your temperature's up, or for example, your heart rate's going up, automatically it's a case of, you know what, stay at home, take a test, check everything first before basically passing it on to anybody else. So from that point of view, it's just required everybody to be really honest with everything. And that, I guess from that point of view, if there's a trust there, then naturally you're not going to want to put anybody else in danger. So you're going to behave pretty well with it. So I think from that point of view, it's been very different. And then it's obviously just making the right lifestyle decisions around, because obviously you don't want to pass it on to anybody else. And kind of the minute there's probably one positive test, it's probably going to stop everything where we are. So it's a case of everyone needs to be pretty switched on that side of things. So again, it just requires people to be really honest and really on it as a person, which is actually worked out really well for us as a group and for the women's group as well.
Yeah, it's kind of worked out a bit like that over here as well. Very small, tight-knit community that's kind of all stuck together really nicely. And we had an outbreak recently, but everyone's kind of pulled together, like you say, like you guys would. We all know that we're grateful for the opportunity that we've got, and it's good that we're kind of keeping up, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And we've had 2 new dads in the group from our side of things, so it's a case of trying to lend a hand whenever people can. So there's a lot of people offering to help out, because obviously you're kind of trying to just make sure everybody's okay and checking in with each other quite a bit individually, just to make sure, like, almost the mental health side of things, everybody's still doing pretty well, because obviously, like, lockdown's a pretty stressful scenario, and there's some people that live on their own, there's some people that live in, as you say, close-knit communities, but almost because they're in close-knit, they have to stay even more closed. It's kind of just making sure everybody's all right more than anything else.
Yeah, cool. So competitions, I think the Pro League's back up and running soon, isn't it, for you guys? Are you sort of deep into preparation for that now?
Yeah, so we actually, yeah, we've got games coming up in the next week. We're playing against Belgium and India in Belgium, which is quite nice, because it's been a quite stressful period, obviously. With as much as training's been great, you always want that carrot at the end of the stick of games at some point. So yeah, the Pro League before Christmas was really good, and frustratingly came away with 4 losses, but actually the growth we made as a group was huge. But the frustrating thing is you can't put it into practice. Naturally, what you want to do is, if you lose a game, you want to be able to right the wrongs almost on that side of things. So it's quite frustrating, but where we are now is a good thing. And kind of, as you say, Pro League's 2 months away. So it's just making sure that we can hit the ground running the minute the games are going, and we're in a really good place as a group. So it's just, as I say, kind of just trying to maximize the time that we've got at home as much as we can, to be able to then push on when we get the opportunity to play those games.
Yeah. So at home, is it, easy to get the motivation to do your individual training in your garden or your garage or wherever it is you train, or is that quite challenging at times? I mean, I find it hard to get out of bed just to sit on the sofa and watch TV during lockdown. So
Yeah,
I'm doing that.
yeah, I think it's unique. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. I think you have to find your own motivation. I think that's the difficult bit at times. Naturally, for people who have been furloughed or things like that, I think that's a completely different ball game. For us, it becomes a bit more complicated when you have as you said, like, as I said before, like, the carrot at the end of the stick is the Olympics, but at the end of the day, they could get cancelled at some point. So you have to train with the thought that they're going on, and if they get cancelled, they get cancelled. But then obviously there's that feeling of, I've done so much for nothing. So I think it's quite difficult sometimes. You kind of sometimes lose the lack of focus and vision, and kind of there's a lot of things that can sway you. So I think for us, it's just making sure we're checking in consistently with what we're trying to stick to as a group, and kind of as individuals as well, to make sure we uphold ourselves to our own rules and values and things like that. So I think from my point of view, I struggled during lockdown 1. I had a big struggle with because I was still rehabbing at that stage. So I actually had a month after, when obviously the news came out the Olympics was postponed, I had a month where I just lay on the sofa. I didn't really do anything. Just lost complete lack of focus and interest in doing it, and mainly because I was just tired. I'd put in so much effort to get to where I wanted to get to physically, that I was just burnt out. So I had a month where I lay on the sofa and people basically questioned me, like, what are you doing? And I just didn't really have any motivation. And then the motivation naturally just came back, was like, do you know what? I want to get fit again, and I want to be able to start the season running. So for me, I found that motivation. And then since then, I wouldn't say I've struggled that much in terms of the motivation for these ones, because it's kind of, there's now an end in sight in terms of vaccines are being rolled out. And obviously Boris has now sent out the whole plan for return, and obviously the dates might shift, but at least you can see there's a plan and there's an end goal. So it kind of, that's the motivation that we need to kind of keep cracking on. And I guess at the end of the day, the goal is normality again. So from an athlete's point of view, there's not really, I guess the motivation's there in front of you, but you've also got to find it intrinsically, and that goes for anybody, whether you're furloughed, whether you've got a normal day-to-day job. I think that kind of thing is, at the end of the day, everybody wants that normality, but you've got to find it within yourself to push through, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure loads of people, who are listening will definitely resonate with your story about lockdown 1. I mean, I know from my point of view, when we found out schools were closed, I was like, what am I going to do? Because I'm a teacher and my job is to teach children. If I'm not doing that at school, what am I going to be doing myself? And yeah, I had a very similar experience actually. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. It was really, really good to hear.
I think it's I think it's interesting, isn't it? Like I've spoken to quite a few like juniors across like the last month or two, and kind of, I think the learnings from these lockdowns will actually be really beneficial in the long run. But for the short run, obviously it was a case of contingency, and basically how can we do as much as we can with knowing that it's probably not going to be the same as what it would be obviously when kids are in classes. So I think from that point of view, I think there's a real emphasis on learning how to cope in adversity, and I think that's only going to help in the long run. It's just unfortunate the circumstances that it's obviously come about in with obviously COVID itself. So I think from that point of view, I think there's a real, I think it's incredibly brave what the teachers have done in terms of tried to teach from home, and by the sounds of it, it's been completely draining from the outside looking in. It looks incredibly difficult, and I think that goes from the teacher's point of view and from a student's point of view.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of quite normal. I think it's quite good, or you kind of have to get yourself to understand that it feels quite normal to be down about it, because it's just not normal. I think when the problem comes is when people are like actually trying to hide the fact that they might be struggling, or hide the fact that they're actually finding it a little bit difficult. Whereas actually, if you own up to it, it's funny how many people kind of you pull together because everybody's in the same boat type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely, totally right. Yeah. I mean, let's move on a little bit now. So let's talk a bit about, Tokyo coming up. I mean, obviously you're probably hopeful that it will happen. What are your thoughts and hopes going into it?
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think it won't look like a previous Olympics, but I guess I've not had an experience of a previous Olympics. So for me, it's going to be unique whether it was how a normal Olympics would go or whether it wasn't. So from that point of view, I'm probably a little bit naive as to what a real Olympics would, or a normal Olympics would look like. But for myself at the same time, I think it'll be an incredibly exciting experience. Whether we have fans in there or whether you have home fans only or whether you have no fans, I think it's just a case of you've got to take it as it comes. But yeah, I'm just really excited. I think the closer it gets, I think obviously the excitement will build. And even at this stage, I'm still really excited now. So I think it's knowing that there's an end in sight, and that's not to say that I'll get picked. I've got to go through the same selection that everybody else has. So from that point of view, I'm kind of excited to know where I am, and kind of if I'm going, great, and if I'm not, well, it's not the end of the road for me. I've still got another cycle left in me in terms of physically. So from that point of view, I just want to keep trying to get better and better and better and better. And if that includes the Olympics, great. And if it doesn't, well, that's life. There's no point getting too down about it.
Well, for you, let's hope it does. I mean, I think it'd be just an incredible experience to go to an Olympics. I went to a few games at the London one, absolutely brilliant. It would be a shame without fans, but like you say, if it has to be, it has to be. And I'm sure the hockey experience will still be fantastic because even without fans.
Yeah, 100%. I think Japan will put on an incredible show. I think they'll make the best of what they've got if they get the opportunity. I think it's always a place I've wanted to go. And under normal circumstances, I'd have probably tried to travel as well. But obviously, with everything going on, I think that's not really an opportunity. So I think they'll do as good a job as they can do, and I think they will absolutely smash it as well. I think it will be an incredible spectacle, even with the current scenario going under.
Oh, another country to tick off the touring list, I guess, as well. You must.
Yeah, just a little bit. Oh God.
Yeah. So, tell us about some of your other touring experiences. You must have been to some really cool places.
Yeah, there's been some cool places. There's been some life-changing experiences for sure. All 3 India trips I've been on have been life-changing, I think, from that point of view.
In what way? What kind of things have you done there?
It's not the fact that we didn't really. The frustrating thing with India is you can't really go out and explore that much.
Yeah.
We had a day of it I think in one of the trips, where we kind of got out and got to explore a little bit, but because it's such a unique place in terms of what goes on, unfortunately, as a hockey player, you can't really go and explore as much as what you want to. Whereas, let's say, for example, we did. When we've done Malaysia, it's been a pretty incredible experience because you get a lot more freedom.
Yeah.
So we got to explore KL through the markets and everything in Kuala Lumpur, which is that's a pretty cool experience. And then obviously the more westernized places, you get even more freedom again because it's just easier to get around and understand. So Christchurch was pretty cool. Perth and Sydney have both been pretty incredible experiences when I've been. Cape Town's probably my favorite one. Because because I was probably at an age then when I could kind of appreciate it a lot more. So there was a lot more exploring to be done, Robben Island, things like that, which was a really cool experience, and one that was pretty unique because it's the start of the program. It's a case of a lot of team bonding and kind of getting to know the guys. So it's actually a lot more time spent being able to explore rather than the pressures of games and the pressures of matches. So that was kind of coincided with my first caps, which was a pretty cool, that was probably up there for stories on that side of things. Yeah.
I won't ask you to share too much, but
I can't legally.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, I think, the India experience that you talked about must have been awesome. They absolutely love their hockey in India, don't they? And the crowds must have been crazy.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with India. From personal experience, I've gone out and I've been pretty violently ill for a fair while out there, and at the same time, like, it is just so unique. You don't get that experience anywhere else. It's just mental. Like, you could literally make a tackle on the edge of your D, or you could make a pass and suddenly everyone erupts and you're like, this is just so bizarre. So it kind of, it's not like a normal crowd. It's just noise the whole time. Whereas like other countries, so like when we played Holland, or when we've played in Holland, or when we've played in like big tournaments like the Europeans for me in 2017, like when you do a good action, there's a real response to it. So it's quite kind of what I class as a normal crowd. So when a good piece of skill or a good pass or a good goal or something like that, you get a real buzz from a crowd. Whereas in India, they just scream the whole time, and it's just bizarre. But as I say, like, I've had far too many instances of kind of being ill and I just don't feel very comfortable in India. I just think it's a really, really odd country and how it functions alongside everything else. So I went for my Junior World Cup. It was in Delhi, and you kind of like, we got off the plane, got on the bus towards the hotel, and in the middle of the street, there's just a woman having a poo in the middle of the street. And that was like your eye opener when you've just arrived as a Western boy from a Western country. And you kind of just suddenly, the clock's like, this is a different place to me. And then there's like, it's just a really, incredibly eye-opening experience positively. But it makes you appreciate what you have at home. And then naturally, because of that, you miss it. And then it all becomes a bit more like carnage. So from that point of view, eye-opening is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, cool. I'm sure you've probably got loads of those sort of things. And if we chatted to anyone else from your squad, I'm sure they'd say that sort of similar.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess you must get some good team bonding experiences out of those tours and trips as well. Then good time together.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, like, it's close proximity with people that you have a similar interest in. And so the beauty of it is funny the way, so we said so the latest Pro League trip we went on, so normally you share a room, you probably spend quite a lot of time in your room as pairs, just because it's just quite comfortable and it's quite easy and everything else. Whereas what we found on the latest Pro League trip, because you're in single rooms because of obviously like the rules and everything else, actually meal times are a lot more jovial and people stick around a lot longer at meal times, because it's the only time you really get to see people apart from when you're training. So from that point of view, it's actually like, it's really interesting when you get those opportunities, because you learn to, so from this, we're learning to appreciate it a bit more again, the kind of fact you get to go and see people and speak to people even from like a 2-meter distance is still like very sociable now. Whereas I think you get used to, as I say, staying in your room and kind of spending a lot, as much as you know each other well, you probably miss out on quite a bit, because you kind of, obviously it's a tournament or it's games and you kind of just focus on them. Whereas I think we're trying to take the whole bigger picture in again, which is actually really good.
Yeah, it sounds like a really positive way to sort of go about things, because, I know from sort of my own work experiences, when you're with work colleagues, you tend to talk about work. So I guess for you guys, you would probably tend to talk about hockey, which might not necessarily be conducive to sort of good play and good team bonding and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I think it kind of, it's not an unwritten rule, but a lot of the time, conversation, you try and stay clear of hockey at meal times and things, because it's the last thing you want to do is all day, every day is think about one thing. So actually, like, meal times were great because it just gives people a bit of a break, and kind of, it's a break in the day where you can kind of just go and just chat about absolutely anything. And for 45 minutes, you could be chatting about gaming, you could be talking about geography, you could be talking about your own experiences that you've had, and kind of, it just gives you that real freedom to kind of just sit down, eat a meal and relax as if you would do in a normal circumstance when you go to a restaurant and things. So from that point of view, meal times are kind of a very sociable experience for the group, which is quite nice because you get staff and players all mixed in. So it just becomes more and more relaxed and more, informal is probably the best way to describe it.
Oh, it sounds really fun. Yeah. I mean, I can't move on from Olympics without asking Alex this question, which is about whether Great Britain will win a medal or not. I mean,
hopefully.
What do you think?
It's an answer that I want to say yes to, but at the end of the day, it's in my hands and it's out of my hands. I think one thing we will do is kind of put in our best performance, and if the best is good enough for a medal, then great. And if it's not, at least we can come away knowing that we've put in everything that we could have done. So I think from that point of view, I wouldn't say a medal's, it sounds going to sound really weird, but a medal's not the goal. The best performance we can give is the goal. And if that means a medal, then fantastic. And if it doesn't, that's unfortunately, sometimes people can just play better than you on the day. So I think from that point of view, we're just making sure we concentrate on ourselves and not worry about that side of things, kind of let them take care of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great way to go into any sort of game, really. Just play your way, play as well as you can. And yeah, if you give your best, then that should be good enough. I mean, exactly. Particularly on the men's side, it's so competitive at the moment, isn't it? Particularly at the top, you've got Belgium, Holland, India are definitely looking up as well. And some really strong teams there, aren't there?
Yeah, and I think naturally you want to play against the best as well. So I think from that point of view, it's a case of just looking forward to the challenge. And when you get the opportunity, you've just got to be there to take it. And at the end of the day, it is pretty much a competition. Like, you have to win every game, or you have to play as the best that you can play. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, that's your chance. So I think it's from that point of view, it's just a case of just making sure we don't miss an opportunity.
Definitely. Yeah, really good way to look at it. So looking at like sort of good teams, best team you've played against recently?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't ignore Belgium, really. I think they're a team that have gelled for a fair few years now. Yeah, they're just very, very technically great and physically strong as well. So they're just an awkward team to play against. They have their own specific style of play. And at the end of the day, if you've got the certain individuals that they've got within that group as well, they're just a really strong outfit. So yeah, I think you can't really look past them. I think they're the top dogs, and kind of they're the ones that people want to take down. Yeah. And I guess our aim is to try and get up there with them.
Yeah, so it's a good target, that, because I mean, like you say, you've got some really good players. And would they be some of the sort of best players you've played up against, or would you pick others?
Yeah, some of them, yeah, for sure. I'd struggle to put a 16 together that I've played against that are, in terms of, I'd struggle to find, and I'd probably have about 25, 30 that I'd probably put in a group that I'd really struggle to pick out a 16 from. But there's definitely a few players from that group that would go in there for sure. Yeah, they're just very good. That's the only way to really describe it. Yeah, very good individuals and a very good team. So I think it's one that, again, I just look forward to those games, because you're turning up, and there's been international games where I've turned up and I know I'm just going to get hit. So it's a bit like not that enjoyable experience. Whereas against Belgium, kind of, they just come to play. So it's a wicked opportunity to kind of pit yourselves against the best, because they're going to be trying to do it as well. So it's a really fun experience, those games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously not playing at the same level, but when we play, our best teams play together or against each other over here, they're always the best ones to sort of get involved in, the ones you look forward to the most. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely a great experience playing some good teams and good players. Yeah. So sort of thinking back to your earlier career, because we have a lot of kids who might listen into this. What kind of experiences really drove you to sort of try and get to the top of hockey?
I don't know if there were many experiences. I guess I probably had pretty influential coaches. I had 2 or 3 coaches in my youth career where they were just really responsive and kind of never really held me back. So one of my first coaches, a guy called Jimmy McKenna, would always just be like, just go out and play. Don't worry about anything else. Just go out and enjoy yourself. And kind of, that was always the freedom that I had as a player, and kind of, it always spurred me on. And I was pretty lucky to go from being coached by him for years to then playing alongside him. So he's a really, really influential bloke on my career. Yeah, I wouldn't say there was anything that really, I think I just decided at an early age I was going to go do it, and that was it. I was always a pretty sport-driven mad kid. Yeah, so I played a lot of tennis when I was younger, and I really enjoyed that, but it was an individual sport, and I actually enjoyed the doubles more than singles, because it was just naturally just pairing off with somebody who kind of you just bounce off as a person. And again, I was pretty lucky that I had a great doubles partner that I spent 4 or 5 years playing with, which was actually like a lot of fun. Going around county tournaments and kind of terrorizing opposition that we were playing against just because of how we acted, because it probably drove them mad. I was always driven by team sports, and kind of it was always the love of the people.
Yeah.
As I say, I've been pretty blessed with the groups of people, whether it was playing for Bowden under-15s up in Manchester, or whether it was playing for the first team, whether it was Sheffield Hallam first team, or playing abroad in Hamburg. Like I've had so many experiences where I've always just connected with people, and I've always been pretty blessed with really good teammates around me. So from that point of view, I guess I've just been pretty lucky on that side of things. Yeah, I wouldn't say there was ever one experience that kind of drove me to really get to where I wanted to do. I just decided at an early age that was kind of, once I picked up a stick, I think that was kind of love for the game, and that was it, done. And then everything else, naturally you have setbacks, but you've just got to see them not as setbacks, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's a brilliant attitude to kind of sort of share with younger people, isn't it? About their sort of journey through anything in life. You know, if you have a setback, sort of pick yourself up and crack on.
Yeah, like I mean, if you're talking like setbacks, so I've injuries. I've had ruptured ankle ligaments in both ankles. I've had an ACL in my right knee. I've had a dislocated shoulder. I've had spinal fractures. I've had broken arms, broken wrists. But I just never seen them as a setback. I've always tried to find ways around it. So with my knee, it was just a case of trying to get as strong elsewhere as I could. And kind of just trying to frame it in a way that is that will be quite positive, and kind of just constantly just trying to push yourself. And to be fair, without realizing it, a lot of the time, some of the injuries when I was younger, I actually just did other things then. So I just went and pursued, if it meant I could be more social with mates, then I'll go do that. And if it meant I could concentrate more on exams, then I'd go do that. And that kind of, I was always trying to just push myself into a different world if I couldn't think of anything for the hockey side of things. So I think from that point of view, as I say, like the more you can try and view it as an opportunity to go and do something different that you wouldn't normally be able to do, I think you can always put a positive spin on something.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. Yeah, what great attitude to have, and that's probably why you're where you are now. I would think some attitude like that. So yeah, really good. Well, I guess we're sort of coming to the end of time, I think, and you know, it'd be really good to get you back. And one of the things I know you really enjoyed last time was the meat draw.
Oh, I've still never seen anything quite like it. And I'm such a fan of it. I think it's such a great way. And I actually spoke to, funnily enough, I live across the road from a butcher's. So I spoke to them about doing it at Surbiton. They weren't keen. So I was pretty gutted about that, to be honest with you. Because I think that's such a genius idea. And I think and the more you do, obviously, I guess you just get families coming back for it, even just for that.
Yeah. It's part of the family side of it, isn't it?
I just love it. I think it was such a cool thing.
Brilliant.
More annoyed I didn't win anything more than anything else.
Well, you'd have to get it back on the plane as well. It might have been a bit of a...
It might have been an issue. Yeah, customs these days, God.
Yeah, mental. Yeah, talking family side of it, I mean, it seems, certainly over here, hockey's a massive family sport. Is that something that you've seen in the UK as well? And
yeah, for sure. I think, it's the social aspect. I think hockey's always been a great social aspect for whether it's families, whether it's kids. I think there's always been, whichever club you go, there's always a case of you speak to a junior or you speak to a parent, and obviously vice versa, the other side of it. So from that point of view, like I've always been blessed to be around a club where I had people my age and their parents played. And if they didn't, we had a back to hockey. When I first joined Surbiton, the back to hockey was quite small beforehand. And then once they really put some time and effort into it, they had about 70 or 80 parents coming down and kind of getting involved. And they've had an incredible return on people playing actually adult hockey now rather than just the back to hockey. So I think from that point of view, it's a real easy thing to grow. I think you've just got to put a bit of time and effort into it to make sure that people will actually enjoy it and actually get what they want out of it. So whether it's just to keep fit or if it's to join a team, I mean, either or is great. So I think from that point of view, it's just making sure you're willing to put the time and effort into it, because it is worth it.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a great initiative as well. Sort of getting parents into hockey, because it's something they can then share with their children, isn't it? And I think
100%.
It's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks so much for being on, Brendan. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, well, we wish you all the best in the Olympics and your upcoming FIH Pro League games. And yeah, we really hope to have you back in Guernsey soon.
Oh, get me back on the island.
Definitely. We might give you a little opportunity to surf as well if you fancy it.
Not that, no, I'll be terrible.
No.
I've got no balance whatsoever.
Fair enough. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks. Cheers, Steve.